Number 14, sedan. Sedans are what most people picture when they hear the word car. A typical sedan has 4 doors, 2 rows of seats, a solid roof, and a trunk that's completely separate from the cabin. It follows what designers called a 3-box layout: engine in the front, passengers in the middle, and luggage in the back. Interestingly, the name sedan has nothing to do with cars originally. The word actually goes way back to the 1600s, when wealthy people in Britain got carried around in chairs with a roof and doors. These were called sedan chairs, and the term stuck. As for the origin of the word, most language experts agree it likely comes from the Italian word sedere, which means to sit. However, there is some debate about which manufacturer first used sedan to describe a car. Some historians say Speedwell, a small Ohio-based automaker, used sedan in 1911 for a 2-door closed-body model. Others credit the Hudson Motor Company as they released their first sedan with a standard 3-box design in 1913. Either way, by the 1920s, sedan became the standard term for any enclosed multi-passenger car. Number 13, station wagon. Station wagons are what happen when you stretch out a sedan and give it a backpack. They use a 2-box layout, passenger space up front, cargo space in the back, with a tailgate that swings open like a hatch. The name comes from their original uses in the early 1900s, transporting people and luggage between train stations and country estates. Shockingly, early versions of station wagons weren't built by car companies. Instead, cab drivers looking for more cargo space modified vehicles like the Ford Model T, with custom wooden bodies built by coach builders. Seeing the potential of custom-made station wagons, automakers started making their own. The first one to come out of the assembly line of an auto manufacturer was the 1923 Star 4 Model C station wagon. By 1935, the Chevrolet Suburban introduced an all-steel body, which replaced wood as the standard. Station wagons became widely popular in the 1960s and 70s, especially for families, but demand declined in the 1980s as the next type of car took over the segment. Number 12, sport utility vehicle, SUV. The SUV is one of the most popular vehicle types on the road today, but ironically, no one can fully agree on what it actually is. Some say it has to be built on a light truck chassis, others define it simply by off-road capability. So rather than one strict formula, SUV has become a loose label for anything that blends utility, ruggedness, and passenger comfort. Before it became a family favorite, the idea started with rugged military vehicles. As early as the 1930s and 40s, off-road capable prototypes were popping up worldwide, like Japan's Kurogane Type 95 and the Willys Jeep that would go on to serve Allied forces in World War II. In the US, the 1935 Chevrolet Suburban laid the groundwork for what many consider the first SUV. Though originally designed as a people hauler, it offered the kind of space and toughness that would define the segment. But it wasn't until the 1963 Jeep Wagoneer arrived that the modern SUV truly took shape. It combined 4-wheel drive capability with a more refined ride, automatic transmission, and even air conditioning. Suddenly, rugged could also mean comfortable, and this is how the modern SUV we know was born. Number 11, crossover. The crossover is one of the youngest and yet most dominant vehicle categories in the modern auto industry. During the 1980s and 1990s, full-size SUVs were gaining popularity, but their size, weight, and fuel consumption made them less than ideal for everyday urban use. At the same time, traditional family cars like the station wagon were falling out of favor. This left a gap, something that could combine the comfort and efficiency of a car with the practicality and higher ride height of an SUV. Therefore, automakers began experimenting. In 1980, AMC released the Eagle, a passenger car with permanent 4-wheel drive and a slightly lifted suspension. It was years ahead of its time and laid the groundwork for something more. Then, in 1994, Toyota introduced the RAV4. It featured unibody construction, just like a typical sedan, but looked like a compact SUV. It was small, light, and fuel efficient, yet offered the visual appeal and versatility people wanted. Honda quickly followed with the CR-V, and soon the idea took hold across the industry. The defining characteristic of a crossover is its unibody platform. Unlike traditional SUVs, which use body-on-frame construction borrowed from trucks, crossovers are built more like cars. This makes them easier to handle, quieter on the road, and more fuel efficient, without giving up that all-important elevated driving position. Number 10, coupe. Coupes are traditionally 2-door cars with a fixed roof and a 3-box layout, 1 box for the engine, 1 for passengers, and 1 for the trunk. Compared to sedans, they typically feature a sloping roofline and a sportier stance, which is exactly what sets them apart at first glance. Historically, the word coupe comes from French, meaning cut. It originally described 19th century horse-drawn carriages that had their rear section, along with 2 seats, literally cut off. As a result, these trimmed-down carriages were lighter, smaller, and meant for two passengers. Early automakers borrowed the term to describe similarly compact, two-seater vehicles. By the 1930s, the coupe had taken on many different forms. Some versions, like the business coupe, removed the rear seats entirely to make room for larger trunks, perfect for traveling salesmen. Others, like the Italian Berlinetta, leaned heavily into performance and style, eventually becoming a signature of brands like Ferrari. In recent years, the definition of a coupe has broadened. Some models, BMW M8 Gran Coupe and Audi ERS 5 Sportback, now include rear seats or even four doors, marketed as four-door coupes. Number 9. Hatchback. Hatchbacks are defined by one key feature: a rear door that opens upward, blending cargo access with passenger space. Hatchbacks are often described as 3- or 5-door vehicles since the rear hatch counts as a door itself. This concept dates back further than most realize. The first hatchback ever made was the 1936 Citroën 11CV Traction, avant from the French automaker Citroën. The 11CV had a successful 23-year production run from 1934 to 1957, and over 759,111 units were sold. However, it wasn't officially called a hatchback at the time. The real turning point for this segment came in the mid-1970s with the debut of the Volkswagen Golf. Created by renowned designer Giorgetto Giugiaro, it redefined what a compact, practical car could be. Its huge success helped normalize the hatchback layout across the auto industry, especially in Europe and the United States. Number 8. Convertible. Convertibles are cars designed with a retractable roof, allowing drivers to switch between open-air freedom and enclosed comfort. The idea itself goes back to the earliest days of the automobile. In fact, the first cars were essentially open carriages with engines, so technically all early cars were convertibles. Weather protection came later, usually in the form of detachable fabric roofs. It wasn't until the 1920s and 30s that convertibles began to evolve into more refined, dedicated designs, complete with folding mechanisms, side windows, and improved sealing. As engineering advanced, so did the convertible top. The 1934 Peugeot 601 Eclipse introduced one of the first power-operated metal roofs, laying the groundwork for what we now call hardtop convertibles. By the 1950s and 60s, drop tops had become automotive icons, especially in America, appearing in everything from Cadillacs to Thunderbirds. While their popularity dipped in the 1970s due to safety concerns and tighter regulations, convertibles made a strong comeback in the 80s and 90s with better materials, electric tops, and improved rollover protection. Number 7. Roadster. A roadster is very closely related to a convertible. In true terms, it needs to be a two-seat car with no roof, no side windows, and absolutely no weather protection like a convertible. In other words, all roadsters are convertibles, but not all convertibles are roadsters. Also, the roadster has another name: Spider. While both terms roadster and spider are used interchangeably today, they actually come from very different roots. The term roadster originally came from 19th century America, where it described a good traveling horse. Fast, agile, and reliable on long trips. Naturally, when early automobiles needed a name for their two-seat open-top variants, the term stuck. Meanwhile, a spider takes a slightly stranger route. It comes from a lightweight 1800s horse-drawn carriage called a phaeton. Because it sat high on spindly wire wheels, people thought it looked a bit like a spider, and the nickname stuck. These carriages were fast, flashy, and slightly reckless, just like the sporty cars that inherited the name. By the mid-20th century, roadsters became icons of style and freedom, especially in Europe. Brands like MG, Alfa Romeo, and Porsche built roadsters that prioritized handling and aesthetics over comfort or practicality. Number 6. Sports car. Characterized by sleek styling, agile handling, and a lower center of gravity, sports cars typically feature two seats, a lightweight frame, and a powerful engine. Historically, the roots of the sports car trace back to the early 20th century. Long before the term sports car became popular, which only occurred post-World War I, manufacturers were already experimenting with performance-focused touring cars. A landmark example is the 1903 Mercedes Simplex 60 horsepower, designed by Wilhelm Maybach and Paul Daimler. This machine was praised for its advanced engineering, such as a gated 4-speed transmission, overhead inlet valves, and a pressed steel frame, and even won the 1903 Gordon Bennett Cup, marking it as a formidable performer of its time. However, it was the 1914 Vauxhall 25 horsepower Prince Henry Sports Torpedo that is widely considered the world's first true sports car. Named after a German prince who loved fast touring cars, it was lightweight, aerodynamic for its time, and had performance upgrades to achieve a top speed of 80 miles per hour. Number 5. Grand Tourer. The Grand Tourer, or GT for short, isn't just a car category. It's an entire philosophy of driving, an idea that was shaped by the European elite class. That explains why the term Grand Tourer comes from the Italian phrase Gran Turismo. Back in the 17th century, it was common for wealthy young aristocrats to travel across Europe on extended tours. So when high-speed automobiles began to emerge in the early 20th century, the idea of a vehicle capable of crossing entire countries in comfort and style naturally adopted the name. But it was in the 1950s that the GT truly came into its own. Italy led the charge, with models like the 1951 Lancia Aurelia B20 GT, often considered one of the first true Grand Tourers. It paired a powerful engine with a sleek coupe body and a luxurious interior, setting the formula: 2 doors, a front-mounted engine, rear-wheel drive, and enough refinement for cross-continental travel. By the late 1950s and early 60s, Grand Tourers had become status symbols. Cars like the Ferrari 250 GT, Aston Martin DB4, and Jaguar E-Type defined the genre. These weren't raw sports cars. They didn't sacrifice ride quality for lap times. Instead, they offered smooth power, graceful handling, and just enough luggage space for weekend traveling. Number 4. Minivan. Before crossovers and SUVs took over every driveway, there was one vehicle that ruled the family segment: the minivan. Built with practicality in mind, minivans use a 2-box design like wagons, but with taller roofs, sliding doors, and a lower floor, making them the ultimate people movers. And while most people credit Chrysler with inventing the modern minivan, the idea actually traces back much earlier. In 1936, the Stout Scarab became the world's first true production minivan. Designed by aviation engineer William B. Stout, it featured a rear engine, flat floor, and modular seating, concepts way ahead of its time. Unfortunately, only 9 units were built, as it was the time of the Great Depression. Fast forward to 1983, and Chrysler was on the brink of bankruptcy. That's when the Dodge Caravan and Plymouth Voyager rolled off the assembly line in Windsor, Canada, launching the first modern minivans for the 1984 model year. Built on a car-like platform with sliding doors and a low step-in height, they offered a new kind of practicality that instantly clicked with American families. However, this once hot-selling automotive segment is now facing extinction. One can blame the soccer mom stigma associated with buying a minivan, but one of the biggest reasons is the market dominance of the crossover SUVs. Before we reveal the final 3, make sure to leave a like and share your thoughts on the best car type we've mentioned so far. Number 3. Pickup truck. In the earliest days of motoring, cars weren't sold the way we know them today. Automakers provided just the rolling chassis, and it was up to outside coach builders to add whatever kind of body you needed, whether that was for passengers or cargo. It wasn't until 1902 that the idea of a purpose-built light-duty truck took shape, thanks to the Rapid Motor Vehicle Company in Pontiac, Michigan. Founded by Max and Morris Grabowski, they were among the first to produce 1-ton capacity trucks. By 1913, companies like Galleon All-Steel Body began modifying Ford Model Ts by adding steel hauling boxes. These conversions were built for farms, factories, and tradesmen, anyone who needed more from their car than just a ride into town. Then came the Ford Model TT in 1917, which featured a sturdier frame and became a favorite for early commercial use. But the real turning point came in 1925. That's when Henry Ford decided to skip the third-party conversions and build a factory-ready truck himself. The result was the Ford Model T Runabout with pickup body, a steel-bodied half-ton utility vehicle with a real tailgate, heavy-duty rear springs, and the kind of durability early America was hungry for. It cost just $281, and Ford sold 34,000 of them in the first year alone. Even more importantly, he gave it a name: Pickup. Over the decades, pickups evolved from basic work machines to icons of both function and freedom. In the 40s and 50s, trucks from Chevy and Dodge started offering enclosed cabs, stronger frames, and smoother rides. By the 70s and 80s, families were using them, businesses were relying on them, and entire subcultures began forming around them. Number 2. Supercar. The term supercar might sound like marketing fluff, but it actually has deep historical roots. Back in 1920, a British newspaper used the term supercar to describe high-performance vehicles of the time, such as the King 8-cylinder model. However, at that time, it was more about generating buzz than defining a distinct car type. That moment didn't truly arrive until 1966, with the debut of the Lamborghini Miura. Designed by Marcello Gandini and engineered with a mid-mounted V12 engine, the Miura wasn't just fast, it was revolutionary. It combined performance once reserved for racing with the styling of an Italian sculpture. In doing so, it established the blueprint for what would become the modern supercar. Ferrari, Porsche, Aston Martin, and later McLaren and Bugatti all started chasing top speeds, exotic designs, and headline-grabbing horsepower. The 1980s brought us the Ferrari F40, the first road car to break 200 miles per hour. And by the early 2000s, cars like the Bugatti Veyron were pushing well beyond 1,000 horsepower. Number 1. Limousine. When most people think of a limousine today, they picture a long, luxury car pulling up to a red carpet or prom night. But the limousine's origins go back much further. The word limousine actually comes from Limousin, a region in France. In that area, shepherds wore hooded cloaks, and early cars with covered passenger compartments looked a lot like them. These early limousines had a separate area for the driver, often open to the weather, while passengers sat in an enclosed private space. The term stuck, and by the 1910s, limousine referred specifically to vehicles with a separate compartment for the chauffeur. By the early 1900s, this layout became a sign of wealth and privacy. Limousines were used by rich families, politicians, and business leaders who wanted to travel in comfort while staying separate from their chauffeurs. Things changed again in 1928 when a company in Arkansas called Armbruster built the first stretch limousine. It was originally made to transport music bands and movie crews, earning the nickname Big Band Bus. But soon, stretch limos became popular with anyone looking for luxury and space. Over the years, classic models like the Cadillac Fleetwood and Lincoln Town Car helped make limousines a symbol of status. Even though long stretch limos are less common today, the limousine spirit lives on in ultra-premium cars like the Rolls-Royce Phantom, Mercedes Maybach, and Bentley Flying Spur. We hope you enjoyed this video. Here's another one you'll love. As always, thanks for watching.